Hello there.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good.
You survived the Super Bowl. I'm in Philly, so no
So it was
lamp posts were harmed by my family, but it was really interesting. I'm not an Eagles fan per se, but to be in the area when it all goes down has been interesting.
it's very exciting to be somewhere where a team is doing well. I wore my Lions sweatshirt for the Super Bowl, if that tells you how I was feeling.
And also, did I just call them the Phillies? Because that's how much of an Eagles fan I am. I don't know, like I keep saying the Phillies, that's the baseball team. I don't know why that's easier to say. The Eagles. So
The
Eagles
Eagles,
country, Eagles territory.
the
Maybe I'll
Eagles
get it right
won.
now.
I was
Yeah.
glad they won. I was over the Chiefs.
I heard a lot of that actually. I mean, so far as poor Taylor getting booed, I think it's just because she's part of like the fairy tale of the Chiefs story too. And it's like, meh.
I saw something, not to bring everything back to feminism, which I have a habit of doing, but I saw something, some kind of meme talking about how she showed up at his event and got booed. And then when he shows up at her concert, that everyone is so supportive and loves him and like tying it back to some kind of gender
Right.
thing, which is
Yeah.
interesting.
It's also when you consider that Taylor Swift won either way because she's an Eagles fan. She's
Right.
a native of the area. I thought the booing, like she just gets heaped on whether it's the good or the bad. But I thought booing was sort of like, yeah, girl, you're in it now. So the Eagles fans are going to boo you, like part of the
Yeah.
territory, you know? And
Yeah.
I don't,
Totally.
I'm
I'm
guessing she
sure
didn't probably
I
take
think
it
she's
badly.
okay. She's probably laughing with her billions of dollars,
That's right.
feeling
It
just fine.
eases the blow a little
Yeah.
bit. So,
So we actually wanted to talk about something Super Bowl related today. And I think there's a lot to talk about just kind of in terms of how the ads in particular utilized creators. But the one I wanted to start with is actually something I spoke to a reporter, Christina Monlos, at Digiday about yesterday. Yesterday, from when we're recording this, this is all very meta. Recently,
recently,
spoke to this reporter
yeah.
at Digiday, and she wanted to know how I felt about the Doritos ad, and that they had brought back this crashing the Super Bowl concept. And just for
Mm.
those who might not know, the way it works is they invite users, and I'm for those not watching on YouTube, I'm making air quotes for consumers. They ask consumers to submit
Mm.
a fully blown, fully produced commercial. And then
Mm.
the top ones were put up for votes. And the people
Via
who
social media
via social
and brand
media,
channels and the users, quotes, air quotes again,
right.
channels.
And so
Okay.
the ones who, let's call them what they are, creators who made these commercials had to pimp them out and get votes. And then the winning commercial got aired on the Super Bowl. They got $1 million and they got a trip to the Super Bowl. So for the winners, it worked out kind of. I don't know. I should have asked Christina if the quote she got from me was unexpected. I think she wanted me to talk about how exciting this was for the creator economy and that it indicates that Doritos is going to do more with creators moving forward. My reaction is this sucks for the creator economy. Essentially, the creators were paying Doritos. Doritos got a ton of free content. They got a commercial for a fraction of what it would have cost them to have it produced by a creative agency. They got all these social media posts.
Hmm.
All the people who didn't win spent all this money producing professional commercials
Right.
and putting up basically free, like unsponsored content about Doritos for
Hmm.
no money. And
Hmm. Right.
like, I
Because
think
let's
it's
be clear,
gross.
nobody's going to, oh, wait, say that again. I want to make sure I don't step on
I
that line.
think it is gross.
Gross that the brand is doing this and calling it goodwill or calling it an opportunity. So to kind of tease out the things that you're talking about, my parents are not going to be able to create, as Dorito lovers, I don't know that they are, a video that would even be in contention for this. You know, my kids probably aren't. Like these are people who are investing in high production values They're not rough videos. It's not like Doritos said, we want the best creative concept, and then we will make the end Super Bowl ad with you.
Pay you.
Yeah, and pay you. It's not just storyboarding, it's not just roughing it out. It's fully conceived, produced, edited, post production value, like the whole piece. So the number of users, creators who would even be appropriate for this is reduced right there. So it's not really a creator opportunity, let's say, like widespread. And then it could be hundreds of thousands of dollars, these ads. I mean, probably not on the creator side, but they're expensive, they're time consuming.
Well, the one that won, it was created by two men, and one of them has 6 million followers on TikTok, and he put out a ton of posts about it. And think about what that would cost if they were going to buy these, like, and they were long.
Airtime.
Yeah, like,
Yep.
you know,
Yep.
at least a minute long TikTok videos about Doritos that he was doing for free.
Yeah. And do you know how many finalists there were that were in the mix? All those folks
I'm looking
are
now in
nowhere
real
now. I
time.
mean, not that they're nowhere. They might add this to their portfolios and they may have grabbed brand
Yeah,
attention both from
let's
Doritos and
see.
otherwise.
2002, about 2,200 spots were submitted,
Okay.
giving them the opportunity to foster connections with new creators. They originally did this contest for 10 years, from 2006 to 2016. And I would like to state for the record that this has always pissed me off, by the way.
Right.
They found the contest submissions were of varying degrees of quality and fit.
Doy.
Much of the work met their threshold of content to be leveraged for other occasions throughout the year. So they're going to take advantage of creators all year long.
Okay, because P.S., to enter this contest, you likely had to give away your rights to the content. You had to say that Doritos could use it ad infinitum,
Yeah.
ad nauseum. Okay.
So according to Doritos, they did not factor the creator's followers into its decision process for choosing the winner. But that is stupid because they didn't have to. Those with the most followers were going to get the most votes.
Okay, so it was a voting,
There
some
was,
type
yeah,
of
because the people,
anonymous.
I don't know, yeah,
Interesting.
because
Right. So they
they
can
were
wash their hands of it and say, oh, we didn't factor that in, but
right
that's
when
going
they
to be
chose the
the.
finalists. But the one who won, like I said, he has 6 million TikTok followers, and he was posting these also very creative spots on TikTok telling people to go vote for his commercial, which ultimately won.
Right. I did see the release of them receiving the award and their excitement about it. So I saw
I'm sure.
that
Well,
end.
yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, it paid off for them. I would like to see the excitement of the person who came in second.
Probably not as high. Yeah. So when you brought this up to me, it immediately brought me back to early days of working with food bloggers
Yep.
and how a lot of big name brands and teens somewhere in there would run these types of contests, again, air quotes, sweepstakes, whatnot, with big payoffs, but a lot of power sort of shifting from the bloggers themselves to that brand in terms of the ownership of recipes, let's say, ownership of photography and videos created for those recipes. I'm thinking of bake-offs and cook-offs and all of that stuff. And again, it was a red flag back then in terms of, oh, okay, we see what you're doing, and it is predatory to some degree, which I think is what you're calling out now. And now it's just on a national or global stage. It's seen by everybody and lauded as this great opportunity or a fun way
Yeah.
to maybe for Doritos to be culturally relevant and tap the zeitgeist,
Which is important. And that's it didn't make it into the article because I went on a very long rant. So certainly
this is your
everything can.
forum. Lay it out.
But I think there is a space for some of these newer creators to be utilized by brands. I think knowing what's going to fit the zeitgeist and what's going to appeal to Gen Z is very difficult for older people. I look at the Cheez-Its TikTok and I have no idea what's happening. My old brain can't
Right.
comprehend what's going
Right.
on.
Does not compute. Yep.
And or the Nutter Butter one in particular, like just completely breaks my brain. And so I think there is a place for bringing in young talent, but I think if you're going to acknowledge that you need young talent and that it's important for the brand, well then
Right.
why does it suddenly
Nurture
that's my
that
issue.
pipeline,
Yeah.
nurture the talent. And I agree with you. And this goes back to our conversation last week a little bit about creator versus influencer. I absolutely believe this is where creators shine, is that cultural relevance for brands. And when you're talking about Nutter Butter or Cheez-Its, to my mind, and I'm going on a little bit of a tangent here, like that's their social media team doing probably those things. So how are they leveraging creators to either inform what they're doing on the social front? Because, oh my gosh, look at the trends, look at the demure and mindful, let's capitalize on that. Or how are they seeing creators who meld with what they're doing or align and all of that? So yes, I agree with you that there's a lot of opportunity for brands to intentionally nurture this talent so that the entire industry benefits, or so that that pipeline of talent is in place and not having to go back to day jobs because
Right.
they can't make it as a creator.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, with Nutter Butter, I mean, I've read about that. It's a whole team that's employed full time to do that, which is appropriate. It makes sense and is
Like there's a
great.
strategy behind it. There's
Yes.
budget, strategy. It's much more professional than it might appear when you look at the content.
Yeah, even same with Duolingo. They just released, I think it was yesterday or the day before, they just released their whole brand guide for their social media. Like
Hmm.
it might seem unhinged and kooky, but there's an entire strategy behind it. And yeah, they're using young people, but they're paying those young people to create the content. And I think that's brilliant. And I love that. And I love brands bringing in creators to be part of their social media management. I think what I like about the Doritos is it's bringing in the creators to kind of bridge that gap and take it from social media to traditional media. There's probably a whole other conversation to have as to whether the traditional media even matters to that generation.
Right. I was just going to say, I think last year was a big year for look at the brands using creators in Super Bowl ads. And I felt and heard this feedback around it that they were using creators in very traditional ways. And so it kind of missed the power of working with creators or pulling in the different platforms or thinking a little bit more broadly about how to use creators, because the Super Bowl and the ad space there is pretty traditional ad content or storytelling for the most part. And the more unhinged things we saw at the Super Bowl got knocked, I think, like Seal singing on a rock.
Yeah.
Like that, people had trouble with that one. I feel like there was Tubi had some really bizarre stuff going
Yeah,
on.
with the flesh colored the flesh cowboy
The
hat.
hell,
One of the ones that made me crazy and so I had not, I don't spend a ton of time on TikTok because I remain firm that I think it's going away. But prior to the Super Bowl, Poppy had sent soda machines to a number of influencers, and there was a whole thing going on with Poppy. They also have a very expensive contract with Alex Earl, who, for those living under a rock, is a very popular creator. They used her in the Super Bowl commercial. I thought was really great for Poppy until Alex Earl showed up. And I'm going to be a I guess I'm just on the crab apple train this morning. I'm going to be a
bring it.
contrarian again today. I
Yeah.
thought it was such a stupid waste of money to have her in that commercial because I mean, I at least recognized who she was. Most of the older people watching did not. That certainly cost them a ton of money to have her on there. My daughter and son got it. They were like, oh, this must be an extension of the contract they have with her or just folded in to it. I didn't necessarily pick up on that. And it just felt gratuitous. And I my thinking and watching it was that was such a cute, clever ad. Why would you have wasted money to have Alex Earl in it? You didn't need to spend there.
Right, right. And I hear that in general just about celebrities and spending on celebrities for ads rather than just really great creative carrying it. But to your point, they just then lumped Alex Earl in with that same model of let's just put a familiar face, a celebrity face. What else did it do that is a callback to the creator world where her platform is? And I'm not sure I see that. I don't see now, to your point, the only pre-event promotion around Poppy is me seeing colleagues talk about it on LinkedIn. So I'm
Right.
getting like the industry breakdown of all of this, not a natural feed of her partnership with Poppy on her channels or on Poppy's channels. Which is the point, right? How many Super Bowl viewers are coming from that world over into the ad viewing world of the Super Bowl
Yeah.
and making that connection. And I don't think brands are doing a good job of combining those two sort of paradigms or worlds.
Yeah. If you notice my eyes not tracking you, I wanted to look up a post from Leah Haberman,
Mm.
former co-host of this podcast, because I thought this was smart. This was a smart way to use creators as an extension of a Super Bowl ad. And the one that she said kind of won the day on that was Hellman's.
Mm.
So for the Gen Xers of the crowd, we all loved the callback to when Harry met Sally. That was
Instantly recognizable. Iconic.
absolutely right. But then what was really interesting is that the morning after, they did a social friendly version of that ad on Instagram featuring Vanderpump Rules, Katie Maloney.
Nice.
And then that had like an even deeper callback because she and her co-star Ariana Madix own a sandwich shop in LA. So it made sense from that. But I like that. I think the generations have gotten so spread apart now in terms of what's culturally relevant to
Mm-hmm.
us. You
Mm-hmm.
know, we watched it with three generations watching it in my house, and what makes sense to my father-in-law doesn't make sense to me, certainly doesn't make sense to my kids. It is very hard. I think the only ad that we all were laughing at was the Lilo and Stitch one because it was just funny.
Right. Unexpectedly laugh out loud funny.
Right.
Yes.
But it's very hard to find, and I talked about this last year. My daughter had no idea who Arnold Schwarzenegger was. It's very
That
hard to find
hurts.
a celebrity who's going to appeal to all the generations. It's very hard now, even to find a type of humor that is going to appeal to all
Right.
generations. So, what Hellman's did was particularly clever because they used for traditional media, which Gen X and boomers still watch, they used recognizable people. We all got it. We all thought it was funny. And then they did an extension of it to appeal to younger
Yeah.
generations who have a more social life. And that's really smart to me.
Yeah, it's like a love letter to the viewers in real time, the Harry Met Sally. And then the post event is almost like a wink and a nod to the younger generation.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, a little bit like us and them, like a little bit like we got you too, like
Yeah.
those guys. It reminds me of the insurance company that's like, have you turned into your parents?
Right.
Like, right? Like, that's what I'm wondering is can brands do a better job of acknowledging this gap and not trying to bridge it, maybe, but play with it and have fun with? I think I've said to you, my children accuse me of being an aggressive, violent texter because when I text them, I use grammar and punctuation.
So rude.
They're like, stop it with that. No, it's too much. So that's what I almost hear when we talk about what new media or new themes, how they resonate with younger generations versus what's like, maybe we're never going to bridge that gap, but acknowledging there is that gap could be a fun
Yeah.
place to play.
Yeah.
Hmm. But not on the backs of creators,
No.
not with unpaid labor and creativity and blood, sweat, and tears that they put into these sweepstakes or these opportunities. It'll be interesting to track if anybody else pushes back on Doritos or if they utilize the content in a way to support the finalists, not just the winners of the whole thing. That wouldn't displease me if in the earned media value, which they're kind of tweaking the definition of, they provided a lot of value back to the full range of creators that made the cut and gave
Yeah.
them some additional boost.
Taking it a step further, what I would love to see is any of the content that was created to get votes and to promote the commercials. If any of that content truly resonated and was engaging and did a good job, I would love to see them compensate those creators for that, or even pay them for usage rights to reuse that content, to post that content on their own channels, or to use it in their paid ads. I think there's a lot of opportunity there for
Yes.
Doritos to compensate creators for all the work that was put into it. And I hope, echoing what you said, I hope we see that.
And I think it can be a win-win. So even though it's a transactional, the brand may be paying cold hard cash, I still think there's a way to utilize it for goodwill, community building in that subset of audience that resonates with the content that came in, whose peers created the content that came in, and create a larger footprint of impact for that work that was done versus kind of just a land grab on Doritos' part of like, well, we have the power. We can just take this and use it now. You're right. There's a really wide open space there to play. And I hope they do too. I'm going to be thinking about like, what would that look like? What would that be? It'll plague me as we move into the rest of our day. Like, what would be ideal there? Because there's just so much opportunity. And it doesn't have to be very expensive on Doritos' part to
No.
leverage it and give them momentum and give them, more visibility. And anyway, here I go. I'll
Okay.
stop.
Well, this was fun.
Yeah. Always these conversations are thought provoking and fun, but I encourage more contrarian crabapple tree
Yeah.
Danielle, because what you are pointing out is there's a tradition and a paradigm that we're all operating within. And if we don't challenge it more frequently, then we end up with, in the case of the Super Bowl, activations that fall flat, like, no pun intended, but Poppy, the vending machines didn't work, sort of taking advantage of creators like you're expressing with Dorito. We have to challenge our thinking around what's appropriate and how to leverage creators in all ways. So I encourage you to keep speaking up and shocking those journalists when they reach out for a nice, soft, warm quote. And you're like, let me tell you how it is.
Yeah.
We need more of
Well,
that.
and I think just to kind of point out a bright side of this, I think it's great that influencers and creators are starting to show up in the Super Bowl ads, and it's new. The influencer marketing economy is not new, and influencers aren't new, but them kind of crossing over into this traditional territory is. And there are going to be missteps, and brands are going to have to figure out how to do it and how not to do it. I would encourage them to talk to some of the experts who have been in this space for a long time when trying to noodle that out, so to try to minimize mistakes and missteps. But nothing evolves without some mistakes being made. I can't think of what it is, so we'll edit this out. There's like a Lionel Richie quote that he said on American Idol, like, when you win, you win. When you lose, you learn. That's what it is.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
as the great Lionel Richie says, when you win, you win. When you lose, you learn. And I think hopefully that's what we're going to see here, is that these missteps don't start a new paradigm of taking advantage of creators, but instead this becomes a learning opportunity where we realize, you know what, they actually do have a great voice that's very valuable. So let's figure out how to pull them in while also compensating them fairly.
You know what? And I know we were about to wrap up and now we're in a different, what you're saying, another way to look at this too, is there are these generational languages that are happening. And I know my kid, like not knowing who Arnold Schwarzenegger is or not knowing When Harry Met Sally, if I were watching that with my kids, that's a moment for me to be like, oh, this is funny because, or, oh, you'll never understand it, but this was like the iconic movie, rom-com, da-da-da. The same holds true with bringing influencers and creators in that new language. for the reverse to happen, where the younger generations can tell us, why is that funny? What does that mean? And we do that all the time with TikTok memes in my family, where my girls will play me something and they're howling. And I'm like, and they're like, hold on, mom. And they contextualize it for me. And then it's totally funny, but I'm not immersed in it all the time.
Yeah.
And to drive home that point, the halftime show was entirely divisive because of this gap that we have in, I think, language around what's happening culturally, politically, artistically, creatively, all of that. And I'm here for that. So maybe the entire Super Bowl, we can take away that there is this new opportunity for different generations to teach each other what's culturally relevant and why. And it played out in all different facets of
Yeah.
the game, the ads, and the halftime show.
I was just talking to my sister-in-law about that this morning. She said she couldn't remember a halftime show before where she was still thinking about it 3 days
Yes.
later. And I am here to say, I hope that becomes a new thing for the Super Bowl, that it's actually telling a story and making a statement, and there are deeper meanings, and we can sit and parse it all out afterwards and think about it. Like, that's really cool to me, that it's no longer just a performance, but there's symbolism and deeper, and every little bit of it has some kind of deeper meaning, and it just makes it so interesting and fun and
I think you're
cool.
wildly optimistic because I think it's Kendrick Lamar, who is a Pulitzer Prize winning artist, and we got to benefit from that because of his storytelling and his power and his insight. I hope for the same thing. And I think the last time we all were talking about the halftime show was the nip slip.
Yeah.
Right? The costume, the wardrobe malfunction. And that was it actually did turn political in some ways. But I'm with you. There's a platform there. There's a stage to plant your flag. And he did it. And I'm glad he did it. And yeah, maybe that's another trend we'll see. I hope
At
so.
the rate we're going, next year's going to be Ted Nugent.
Ted Nugent, Kid Rock, John Voight doing the announcing. Oh,
Yeah.
hey, listen, Joe Rogan out there. It'll be very interesting to see.
Please no. Please no.
You heard it here first, people. Danielle just predicted the future.
Okay. On that
This is
note, I
great.
will chat with you next week.
Sounds good. Bye.
Bye.